So welcome again to an episode of the Train the Trainer podcast, in which I try to bridge the gap between science and practice and science. Today, another guest from Force Science Institute, and this is Michael Musengo. Musengo, how do you pronounce it correctly?
Yes, very good,
Yeah.
Musengo.
And I will read the biography from Force Science Institute.
Okay.
By the way, I learned from Dan Fraser that long biographies are not the best way to start a presentation, but I think it's good.
Oh, yes, he's very
Yeah.
good at this. Yeah.
So you are the Director of Learning and Development and a staff instructor at Force Science Institute. And you worked as a police officer also, eh?
Yes.
And his background includes a New York State's DCGS certifications as a general topics instructor, firearms instructor, reality-based training instructor, and academy instructor. So that's police academy. You have specialized in technical operations for over 26 years and the director of the, I think, New York accredited basis SWAT operator course, and has experience as the commanding officer for all firearms and tactics related training for the, this is difficult to pronounce, Syracuse
Yes. Very good.
Police
Sir.
Department, yeah, and SWAT team. He spent 19 years as a narcotic detective, working as an undercover operative, and was a sworn DEA Task Force agent working larger multi-jurisdictional narcotic cases. So there's also many years in narcotics, and you have an extensive background as a training commander and as an instructor yourself, if I'm correct.
Yes.
There's a lot more in this biography, but I think it comes down. You have a lot of experience as a law enforcement man and a lot of experience in training. So welcome, Mike.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here, Eric.
Can we just start with a little short personal question I'm curious about, and that is how and why did you become involved in law enforcement? And related to that, what does it mean to be a police officer, even in all those different domains?
So it's been a while, and my memory going back to why I got involved in it was, it wasn't one of those things where I was really small and this is what I always wanted to do. It wasn't that at all. I went to college and I majored in psychology, and I wasn't finding that I was fitting into the academic world. It just didn't interest me at that time anyway. I was more hands-on, more into playing hockey and wrestling and athletics and hunting and fishing, and very outdoorsy and very hands-on person. After I left college, I lived on my own. I did a couple of jobs on the side, and I found it. I didn't get into any like trouble or anything like that. But back in the day, back in the 80s, it was we spent time going out and kind of getting into things, and I'll kind of share this with you because I think it plays into how my schema was built around taking care of myself on the street and being able to see threats and threat cues there a little bit easier or quicker than others that didn't have the same background. So a little bit of a rough and tumble time through the 80s. So there was a lot of fighting and things like that. So I'll get too deep into it. It's kind of like I go back into my background. It's embarrassing. It's like saying I was good at it. I had my nose broke about 7 times, I think, and hopefully that's it for now.
Yeah.
But, with that background in wrestling and sports and hockey, it was one of those things that I didn't know it at the time, but I think it helped me kind of see things before they started to happen on the street, where I know it's a lot different for the youth going in today, where it's not customary for people to grow up with a lot of physical altercations, which I suppose that's good in general. But what they're missing out at growing up and seeing those cues and picking up on those kind of inherent cues is you're going into a job where this is probably will and can save your life or keep you from getting damaged quite a bit. And it's something that's more difficult to pick up later on, only because, the more experiences you get, the better you get at it. People are authored to really hurt you when you're an adult. When you're a kid, it's usually just, a knock on the nose and then you become best friends. And that's usually how it worked out. So, what does it mean to be a police officer is something that You know, and I could yarn on for a long time about this, but when I was part of the process of uh, helping us go through the process of bringing on civilians into the police academy. So part of the interview process and all that, they'd go through these layers of interviews. And when we'd finally get it whittled down to whatever group was probably going to be starting, I would always talk to them and give them a little speech, because before they take the oath, I'm not sure if everyone really understands the level of commitment
Mhm.
to not just the job, the life, and all that. We can get into the culture of it and everything else, but the actual level of commitment. And when I talk to I just want to say the youth or the kids coming in, the recruits, um, I was talking to them about priority of life, and they've never heard it before. And to me, it's like, this is something you should understand before you even fill out an application to this job. And I speak to them about that. And it means that, you know, I think pretty much everyone out there has someone in their life that they love so much they would run into, critical danger to save them, right? A burning building or running into gunfire. I mean, hopefully everyone has at least one person in their life, their family or kids or something, like, it's not hard to do that. It's intuitive, it's natural. We love people, we will protect them, and we will walk into, even if it comes to it, have to sacrifice our life for them. um, that's natural. What's not natural is to do that for someone that not only you don't know, but maybe someone that despises you. Maybe
Yeah.
someone that yesterday they were in the back of your car in handcuffs, spitting at your head, telling you that they're going to go back and do terrible things to your family. And then tomorrow they're being held hostage, or they're in a situation where you have to risk your life to go save theirs after you already know that that person has been threatening you. And I said, if that's the level that we need to understand, that to be a police officer, you need to understand that you cannot let emotions come in or have feelings. You don't get to decide who's worth risking your life for.
Mm.
Okay. You just must do it if called upon. And
Yeah.
it's not every day, right? It's just a rare
Yeah.
occasion, but those are the occasions that we absolutely cannot fail on. And to me, when people talk about the nobility of policing, like that term, like Daniel Kobe, I think it's nobility of policing. To me, that's the definition to it in my head. Is
Mhm.
the nobility of policing is being able to do something, and it's not like we're running in like sacrificial lambs. We are going to do what we have to do to survive, but we're willing to go with full commitment towards something that no one else would probably do naturally and intuitively. You wouldn't want to do it for life and death, and you definitely don't want to do it because you know this person, if they gotten the chance, they'd probably hurt you or kill you, but you're going anyway because this is what the situation demands. And when you can fully embrace that and understand that, I think you need to ask yourself a question why you want to do that,
Yeah.
right? And those reasons may or may not be, important, but I know if you're standing next to me in uniform, I want to know that you're going to make that commitment and say
Yeah.
yes. To me, that's like, if you fully understand that before you fill out the application, that may be your calling at some point, and you cannot, I don't want to say hesitate, but you need to go and do that job, or it reflects on all of us, the entire profession across, doesn't matter borders, right? It's what the profession, that's what people rely on us to be able to do when they really need to count on us in the worst situation, is to do the thing that really is counterintuitive to do,
Yeah.
do that thing. And we will, and we have in the past. We've succeeded and we failed as well. So
And,
to
and
me,
and
that's,
if you turn it around, what is the beauty, and what is the beauty of being a police officer?
so I think the beauty of being a police officer is, well, it's a tough one. If you like to do hard things, if you like to do hard things, and that's the way, what gives your life purpose, like Viktor Frankl,
Mhm.
it's about, what does it mean to get purpose? And if it means to carry a heavy load on your shoulders so you can bear weight that takes it off other people, do that for them. I think that's pretty good.
Yeah.
I think that's a duty for, humans in society, is if we can take care of ourselves first, our family next, and if we have something left over, maybe the community. Whereas police officers, we have to have ourselves in order and our families in order. But when we put on the uniform and go out there, we're out there to help the community, and that becomes the number one priority while you're out there. It's not like family, it's the community first.
Yeah.
And I think that when you can commit to carrying a load like that, you can shoulder that and still kind of keep your eyes open, your shoulders back, and walk into every situation ready to take care of business, or, not take care of business, solve problems, or do whatever the task demands. I think that gives pretty good meaning in life. Police officers never really have to wake up in the morning wondering, there's no meaning to my life. I don't have any purpose. Sure, you do. Just punch in, you'll find it, because those calls are waiting for you. You have purpose, call after call after call. So I think that's the beauty of it. Um, there's definitely a lot of challenges that come with carrying a load like that. There's scar tissue, undoubtedly. But
And did your feelings and perspective changed when you grew older as a police officer? So yeah, that's big, because I'm even as a trainer now. Now I'm older, I'm 54. I think back to myself as a law enforcement teacher, and I think maybe I've done something wrong with regard to there were some old guys, maybe they were 60 with over 40 years of policing, and I was a young trainer, and I would ask them to do 20 years stuff, like the youngsters did and so on. And I did not realize at that time that they are another phase of life. So do you have any thoughts about that, about
yeah,
phases of life? Yeah.
I think I definitely, on reflection, and I've reflected on this, as I can remember the different changes and what I thought about, what makes me a good officer, or just what drives me from my first year on as a rookie, like a puppy dog with my tail wagging, just ready to
Yeah.
chew up everything. And then trying to understand why people are this way all the time. I don't understand. So a lot of frustration, the catharticism, trying to find some catharticism there, and then just doing the job, because you just have to go in and do the job. And then kind of taking a little while to come back to having that sense of community again and getting more meaning back into it. So there's definitely this passes rolling, this ebb and flow of things as you go through a career. I've certainly felt those, experienced a lot of changes in how we conducted policing, how it changed. As a trainer, definitely having to understand, being a young trainer coming in, and different generations within your agency. And
Yeah.
I think that, trying to understand their perspective from their time when they were, like, I don't want to say in their prime, but they come from a different era,
Yeah.
and their understanding about things, and how to deal with that. And I found, through trial and error, and much error, of course, which I'm not afraid of anymore, but it does help to get to know them personally if you can. It depends on the size of the agency. But I found if I just focused on being myself and letting each one of them know that I'm here for you, and I'm here to do the best I can because I care about your survival. Every day I'm going to show up, and I'm bringing everything I have to help you go forward. And you can't fake that. It's got to be genuine, right? And that's genuine. And that means, the 30th day or the 40th or 50th day of going in, teaching the same, like the same curriculum, whatever it is. You're outside today, it's raining, it's cold, you don't feel like it. And, when you park your car to walk in there, you better turn that thing right back on, because that's the only time you're going to have that person until their next training, when they come through the next time, which for us was like 6 months. So I feel like the best way, or at least my experience, anyway, my humble experience, the best way to connect with people is to just care and do your really darn best, and listen and learn. And I mean, really listen and really learn, and keep your eyes open, and not just repeat what those before you did. Even if you respect them and it felt like and everything was right, you have to come up with your own style. And you really, if nothing else, you got to be looking around the corner to see what's new. Look at research, look at what's going on, what are other professions doing, look at the sports profession. Don't be afraid to start fully understanding what there is out there to offer us, and a keen eye for limitations to research, and what limitations and application, so you don't get the shiny new things syndrome
Yeah,
and change everything overnight, because I've been guilty of that myself, but that's
of
kind of
course, we all
so.
do. Before we move into to the really the training stuff, I just wanted to hear from you. Do you think, let me give some context. Sometimes in the Netherlands, we have very young law enforcement trainers. So 25 years, for example, they're 25. And now I'm a little bit older myself. Do you think, how much life experience do you need as a law enforcement trainer, especially Greg Bunnell wrote a great paper, that the competencies, how do you call it, the KSIs of training, and one of them was understanding the role of policing in a democratic society was one of the key elements. And but if you're 25 as a teacher trainer, yeah, of course you can give firearms training if you're very good in it and you have some tactical skills. But what do you think about that life experience as a trainer?
Yeah, lack of experience. What we'll find is in the US as well, is we may find someone who has a knack for a certain skill, so they get tapped to be a trainer kind of early in their career. I would never want to turn someone down just because of their age. So it's really has to do with the individual. So we have people at 25 that have had combat experience. They've had quite a
Yeah,
few experiences out there in the world, and they come in and they're already seen a lot and been through a lot, and had trainers since they were 18. Other 25-year-olds, maybe they got out of college and they're just sharp as a tack, and
yeah,
maybe it's an area of study. So I'm not putting one in front of the other. It's just they're coming from different backgrounds. When it comes into training, that hands-on experience to me is going to give give them a little bit wider scope to be able to go in and start moving forward pretty quickly. I think that it kind of taps into one of these issues that we have, I think, across all training and everywhere, not just law enforcement, but specifically what my insights would be in training is so it begs the question, what does it take to become a good trainer? And is
yeah.
age those components, or is experience in one of those components? And I think that if we were just to sit down with trainers and just kind of jot down a quick laundry list of what it takes, um, depending on who was in the room, I think what you would get from most trainers, because I ask this question when we teach some of the training classes, and the same stuff comes up, and it makes sense. Experience is one, very skilled in your domain. So if it's firearms or grappling or driving or communication, whatever it is, or multiple domains, you have a skill and you're good at what you do. You have the gift to gab, is what we say, the jargon, but you actually know how to communicate with people. You can talk to them and you know how to listen to them. So you have good interpersonal skills,
Yeah.
all these things going for you. And like I said already, you need to care genuinely about what you're doing and transferring that knowledge. And we get into that. There might be a couple other little things that you could throw in there, but all those things whether the trainer is 25 years old or whether they're my age, almost 58, I've seen people with all of those characteristics, and I think it predominates the profession that there's a lot of folks out there that have all of those great characteristics. And for me, Eric, I always thought that was the whole picture. This is everything I need to know and be able to do. But it wasn't until probably the last 10, 12 years, maybe I kind of lose track of time a little bit, but I realized that was maybe half at best of what it takes. I didn't realize that there was all this information I didn't know, and that was skilled in domain experience. I can communicate with people, but okay, ask me a question back in the early 2000s. Do you know how people actually learn? And then you have to define what learning is, right? Look that up in Google, you'll get 1,000 different answers. But if for us, for our sake, we can say, especially it's motor skills for us, right? Not just classroom. It's skill acquisition, retention, recall, and then transfer into this novel environment, this unexpected, unknown, contextual environment. Do you actually know, or is it empirically supported? Do you know how how people actually learn or learn best or most efficiently, especially with the timeframes that we're given that we may not be able to manipulate. And the answer, I think, for most people is no. And when I went back and did an honest assessment of myself, well, how do you know how to train them then? And the answer would be, I have an understanding of how I think I learned. Okay. I don't know for sure. I thought I did, but if you really think about it, I've got my own understanding of how I think I learned best to get really skilled at this domain. And what I'm going to try to do is recreate that for people as genuinely as I can and connect with them the best that I can. That's not it. It's good to have your heart into it like that.
Yeah.
What we're doing is relying on these intuitive feelings of how we got good at things, right? And what we know, and you and I both know, and probably, percentage of trainers out there, is that how we feel we learn best is not how we actually learn best, especially when it comes to motor learning. So when you start diving into all of this material, what you'll see is great trainers have been caring for a long time. Their heads start, they start sweating and scratching. And the first feeling is that, oh my God, I've been doing it wrong. What have I been doing? To quote, I quote several people, I think it goes back to Maya Angelou that said, when you know better, do better. And I'm paraphrasing, right?
Yeah.
Forgive yourself. There's no reason to feel guilty. If you care about what you do, you've been doing a good job. And the trainers before me, Block and Silo and all stuff, they care just as much as I do. They were working with what they had. So when you know better, do better, and then start incorporating that. So to me, to get back to the root of the questions and dance around it a little bit, I tend to do this, Eric, by the way,
I also, yeah.
is if I have a trainer, I can have a trainer that's 22 years old that's on a path to discovering all of this information and they're building their ability to do all of these things. I can have someone like me that was in my 40s before I just started discovering these things. And I'll take the trainer that has a better understanding of how to structure training and motor learning and how to speak to people, get proper feedback, timing, not, you know what I mean? And then the experience will come from that. Not only will they gain experience, I think that they'll start getting it tenfold because they understand things at a scientifically conceptual level, as opposed to just, oh, they can repeat what I showed them how to do with the trigger or the grip, that behavior training work.
Yeah.
Actually, when they leave in about 2 or 3 weeks from now, that 8 hours you spent with them on that, really going to fall off. And it felt good at the end of the day, and they felt good walking away, but it fell off. So I'm not going to say it's important entirely. It depends on the individual, but for young trainers out there, I remember going in as a trainer when I first started, and I had that feeling of nobody knows me, and I'm just this young guy that shoots a lot and does all these SWAT things. Show them you care, be a professional at this craft, and they cannot deny you. I'm telling you right now, they cannot deny you. It may take them a minute to kind of get used to you, but when they realize that you know what you're doing and you are a true profession, you treat it like a profession and let them know that this isn't just some day job that I'm doing. And and again, advice to anyone that's what it is, the retired on duty, just, hey, I did my work for 20 years, 25, I'm a trainer now, I get to kick back. This is not the profession for you. And I doubt anyone listening to this podcast is in that category. I
don't think so.
So I'm not offending anyone here.
No, great. What I learned also, because I had the opportunity to become an instructor for many groups, which I didn't know, like I didn't know nothing about the profession, to be honest, like the intelligence teams and so on. But I was a little bit older, so I knew from the start just to be curious. It's everything you said right now, but then don't try to be one of them. Don't try to act like what like what they are doing. Just asking, what is your work required from you? How can I help you with that? And that was great. To be grounded, relaxed, open.
Yeah. Once you get used to that, it's very easy.
Yeah.
You can't fake it till you make it. It's just a saying. It doesn't actually work.
No.
It doesn't. And know your limitations and
exactly. Yeah.
Just be honest about it. And that way they know you're not trying to,
And I had some fantastic colleagues. They really sometimes they helped me, you know, like it was a little bit, yeah, how do you call it? I could give a smile, like they told me how they did the procedures. Well, I was, and I learned a lot and a lot and a lot, and I, yeah. But if we go back to learning, Mike, if you are a young trainer, and of course we are internationally we have talked a lot about motor learning and all those new concepts like desired difficulties, retention, transfer, and so on. But if you are let's say if you are a beginning trainer, regardless of your age, what is an important learning principle, very important learning principle that such a beginning trainer can use also, so it's also implementable? What do you think of? What is important? Of course, there are a lot of important principles,
Yeah,
you know, but
so I think when one of the questions that we get on this when we talk about motor learning and structuring training frameworks and curriculum and all that, and I know when I speak on this with trainers, some of them will just be like, "Ah." They, and the reason is you're talking about all those things that I don't have any control over.
yeah,
I can't integrate this and that and spacing. That's my boss, and they should be here now. So there's all of these um, walls, right? There's all these walls and things that we need to work around, these obstacles and all these things. And to me, those are all challenges. It's like just understand. But I always say there's a couple of different veins here. There's a couple of different ways of using this. And the terms that I use, I just came up because they work for me, is macro and micro. And then the other part is, what you can do as far as the curriculum structure base. And then the other part of it is you as a trainer, right? So those two things, and then macro and micro. And what I mean by that is the macro, to me, the macro level is if I'm in a position like I was where I'm a training commander and I'm there to support 52 instructors that I say I worked for because I did to help support, but I can help move things around in the schedule format, maybe some curriculum development. But on the micro level, before I got in the position of as a commander, that I could take these things that I've already been studying and trying to understand and put them on this macro level. I was already using these when I was just a firearms instructor. So I was just working in the one domain before I got promoted and went into the other stuff.
yeah,
I didn't tell anyone because, well, I didn't need to, and I didn't think they'd want to hear about it anyway. So using things like random and variability and spacing, a little bit of interleaving, I can do that on a micro level just within one domain. So instead of going on the range saying we're gonna just work firearms, fundamentals of marksmanship for how often, and then we're gonna build that eventually into some type of combat horrors or shoot, move, communicate, something like that, where let's end up on a technical thing. Everybody be happy, and we'll get some movement in there. And that was really a traditional way. Is I would change things up. What are we looking at? Well, let's look at we've got the speed and accuracy trade-off, right? That's very similar to the efficiency thoroughness trade-off by Holnagel's. Like, look at those principles. Those are the same. I can interleave those right within a course of fire. I can start spacing those out and adding contextual relevance during the
mm,
firearms training by very, 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 very safely transitioning into. I don't want to make sure that people out there listening, like they're doing NLTAs and sims during live training. There were years I wouldn't touch it, but now understanding we just have to throw it out there so nobody just stops listening to me at this point, because very, very strict
yeah, of
3 levels of security going from
course,
something to where I'm taking something, the discipline they're working on, and then we're going to put some contextual relevance to it so they see it, they feel it. Not only that, but it burns in, right? I
yeah,
get stickier because now I show them that skill that we're working on is here, and I'm not doing it in such a structured, strict way on the range that I'm basically telling them what to do and they're just repeating what I tell them to do. And again, that's a firearms example. You can do it in anything. I'm giving them something, and I really kind of dabbled into the ecological approach in my mind as far as doing that, and allowing to create these situations where I allow them to perform and discover these movement solutions, to use that terminology, right, on
yeah,
their own. So much of this feedback that's just augmented feedback, constantly telling them the way that I see it as right. right?
Yeah.
Because it's biased a little bit. And I know it is. And Eric, I fought this for a while in my own head because, yeah, but this is so right, and this feels so right, and this kneeling position is right, and this position under here, it's right, it feels good, and I'm accurate. And it's like, okay, have your gunfights looked like that? And the answer, when I honestly go, no, they didn't look anything like that. I always say it's like you're twisting and turning and grunting and farting and stairs and falling down and things are happening and people around. And well, what are you preparing for? Well, we're preparing people actually to do really good at the games we play on the range or on the mats. If those are the games, we're preparing for the game. That's specificity and training.
Yeah.
What do we need to do? And it's actually like we're hitting what we're aiming for. We're aiming, to me, a lot of times, and again, speaking generally, at the wrong thing. We're trying to hit the bullseye of the evaluation point. But how close is to that? How close to that is the reality of what we're
Yeah.
facing in the real world? So start there, re-engineer what we're doing back and
Yeah.
use the principles, right?
Yeah.
Start with what does the reality look like? And maybe you find information in, like, for us, Leoka, I would say look at your own agency, because maybe Leoka doesn't really reflect what's going on in yours. So we did that. Most of our gunfights happened around vehicles and doorways. And up until, several years ago, there was never a doorway or a vehicle anywhere near the range. Right?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
So yeah, those things. So on a young instructor, there's going to be only a certain span of control that you're going to have about how you conduct the training, or even if what does your training day look like, you may not have any say in that, but you can certainly, trust me, this is a perfect time in your career to dive deep into what we understand about training. One of the things that you can do is understand feedback and communication. I think that's a great place to start.
Yeah.
Study human error. That's one area. It was a little bit later in my career when I found value in that. And a friend of mine, Dr. Paul Taylor, gave me a book, and I didn't like it. It was hard to read. And he said, "How did you like the book, Mike?" And I go, "I didn't." And he said, "Here's another one, and here's another one." And I finally got into it. And then the light bulbs went on about understanding error, human error classification, skill, rule, knowledge. And oh my goodness, what it's done for me now as a trainer and
Yeah.
understanding feedback, attention, and feedback. You can start with that right now as you're gaining experience, and it's going to make you a better trainer.
Yeah.
Insights.
I would like to come back to the human error part, but before that, a question I'm struggling myself with: how do you balance, let's say, some biomechanical, is that a word?
Hmm.
Biomechanical?
Not
Yeah,
mechanical. Yeah.
biomechanical principles with finding your own personal solutions. I just talked with Dave Collins. He's a professor from the UK. I think he calls it depends coaching also. But even in ecological dynamics, you have like the continuum. The one end is just find your own solution, and the other end is there are some attractors and some, like principles you have to obey. So how do you balance that? For example, I'm doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I love to play with it, like in the ecological dynamics, or however you call it, to find solutions for problems.
Yeah.
But it's not to say you can do anything, because some things, and if you train with, for example, maybe you have met him, if you train with the great Hickson Gracie, it's very principled, like where you put your weight and where you do this and where you do that. So how do you balance? It's a long-winded question.
Yeah, it's a tricky one for sure. And I'll share with you that I retired 3.5 years ago, and when I started learning about ecological dynamic approach, I had moments where I said, "Oh, geez, you know what? I got that right by accident. I didn't know I was doing it." And so that's good when it happens, but a lot of things I didn't. I know that I was very technical. And that's because I thought that was the way. Focus on process, you'll get the result. And then when I started reading into ecological dynamics, again, I had the moment where I was like, I was interfering with their own ability to learn and discover these movement solutions. And man, so the balance is So, you know, it really depends. So I didn't really get to use that to its strength back when I was running the academy, or was just starting to learn a little bit into, but now I love it. And I'm smiling, a big smile, Eric, because I started jujitsu about right when I retired to help fill
Nice.
the gap of that. And I'm completely addicted. I'm
Yeah.
training tonight. So I'm on the road as much as I can. I'm going to Jocko's camp this summer up in Maine, and
Wow.
yeah, I'm just so addicted to it. But as you say, I'm smiling because when I train, it's to me, it's extra special reward because I'm doing what I'm doing, but I'm also thinking about training principles as I'm doing it. And as you know, most Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu instructors are just very similar to law enforcement instructors in
Yeah.
that they're very skilled in their domain, they care all those things. But again, very little knowledge about motor learning, right? It's
Yeah.
like they structure training based on, okay, here's technique, show it, drill it, drill it, drill it, drill it, drill it, drill it, and then roll, and then have a good day. So, which the nice thing is they are adding that contextual part of the game into every day, usually,
Yeah.
which is good. So, but there are other things are so technical, and some of the more complex skills, um, you know, I can feel them as soon as I'm doing these higher organizational skills, these really complex, multifaceted movements to get to the sweep or something. This this isn't gonna work. You know, I'm not gonna. It's gonna take me 6 months to focus on this to get this to the point.
Yeah.
And the balance between just listening and doing something a certain technical way, and if it may take me 6, 8 months, or I may never figure out that detail on my own, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm not a hardline ecological approach. I think that just like block versus interleaving, it's kind of a hybrid of
Yeah.
getting them there. But I do understand that, you know, through constraints led approach, you can kind of guide people into discovering that movement
Yeah.
solution. Which, okay, that's great. And in jujitsu, because I don't plan on stop doing it until I physically can't anymore. I have all the time in the world, and it's a
Yeah.
hobby. So someone can use constraints until I find that particular movement with that grip or that turn, that slight turn that changes the entire movement, right?
Yeah.
Uh, that's okay. But we have time constraints in law enforcement, right?
Yeah.
So if I don't get them to this movement solution there, I won't see them for 6 months.
Yeah.
And then they're going to explore again because we've got all of these things to do. So we're under different
Yeah.
constraints ourselves. So if I can,
Dave told me, I found this a nice way to, he said, if I have 2 hours to learn somebody to, how do you call it? To rappel out of a rock, you know, what is it?
oh,
You
like
know,
free
like,
fly.
yeah, like, what is it called? With the rappel? What is rappel? You know, climbing out of the rocks.
Oh, oh, what do they call it? Scramble?
Yeah,
Scramble?
just of, let's say, rock climbing.
Right. Yeah. Chris
Yeah,
Butler calls it scramble.
yeah,
Scramble. I had to look
yeah.
it up.
You don't say like we have 2 hours.
Mhm.
Just try to come above on the rock and and explore them. And you know, you can also sometimes you need to be a little bit more directly maybe. And there are some principles. I guess there are some principles which you cannot deny, like balance, maybe getting
Yeah.
your what. Yeah,
There's some things that just the technique is only going to get you so far,
yeah,
right? And I now when you're talking about like firearms, now we're talking about biomechanics, we're talking about ergonomics too, right? Because
yeah,
now we're
yeah,
tools. So in the tools, to me, there's limitations of what this tool is going to do.
yeah,
Whatever, it's a car, it's a gun, it's a baton, so. And then how does my body interact with that? And
yeah,
it's like jujitsu. I'm more experienced with guns. I've been shooting unlimited ammo for years and years and years. There was a time that if we don't give out white belts and black belts in firearms, but I can't remember how long it took, but all of a sudden I started feeling like when I'm firing a 45 or a 9mm, there's so much focus on recoil and all that. I felt like I was just holding a cup of coffee,
yeah,
pulling the trigger, and the recoil just disappeared. It was running through my body. It was like this weird metaphysical experience of
yeah,
picks the gun up and it just looks effort, and it's
yeah,
going on. I could not teach myself that through technique right now. It was a matter of repetition and time and my body's ability, that inherent learning, right? That ability for my
Yeah.
body to do what it does non-consciously, for all those little engrams and things and all those connections to occur. So my expectations in jujitsu only 3 years is I definitely notice when I'm feeling just a weight displacement change that means something. And to me, that's the same thing, that
Yeah.
through technique that might get you in right positions, but until you feel the movements in your body,
Yeah.
is like, I know you know what I'm talking about. It's
Yeah.
like that, and then those connections start happening. That's the connection and with the brain and the
Yeah.
body, and within that skill and that craft and the game itself, that gets us into that brown belt, black belt
Yeah.
level.
Absolutely.
So to get people into any skill in law enforcement, to me, this is my humble opinion, just from my experience, by training once or twice a year is a joke.
Yeah.
It's not funny, but it's not, you're not going to get there. Um, so what do we do? Right. So
Yeah.
it's like, what is the application piece to
Yeah.
it as a trainer? And while we're leaning on those walls to be able to get more time and everything, I always ask people, are there ways that you can get smaller pieces of time spread across, right? So that's what we did in the academy, where we took
Mm.
all block training and we ended up interleaving everything. So
Wow.
all skills, so pretty much the entire span of the 30 weeks of the academy. So there's shooting here, and then they're doing the next one, the next one, the next day. And there's a lot more to it than that. We use
So you
time.
you succeeded to combat block and silo training on the academy?
Yes, yeah, we experienced
Wow.
my biggest the biggest regret, and I knew it ahead of time, Eric, was that I knew that it would be great to be able to have someone involved to be able to track it from a scientific perspective,
Mhm.
but I didn't have the ability to do it. I didn't have the resources, and everything that we were doing was just trying to get it hammered out the schedule. I wasn't worried about making mistakes with it because I think I studied it enough to realize that even if we just did the interleaving with no scaffolding and building process, if we just threw it on the calendar, it was still more productive than block training, right?
Yeah.
It was still more productive, but we had a lot of fun. There was a lot of challenges and there was a lot of work. And most nights I was up until 1 or 2 in the morning. Um,
Is
and
is
I
is
love to
is is
talk
is,
about
is to implement that the you know, to combat the block and silo training, do you need some leader who steps up, who has also the influence? It's macro level thing in your framework, isn't it?
yeah. So I wouldn't have been able to do it. I think my biggest, I would say, the things that really made this possible is I had 52 instructors that were with adjuncts and everything, but I had a smaller full-time staff and then some primary instructors in certain areas of defensive tactics and firearms and driving, medical, all those things were getting their hands dirty with things. And those primary ones. So before the academy started, I set up some training for them. And I'm a big proponent, and I hope this doesn't turn people off. They just allow me to explain the benefits of this because it's might not be what you think it is. I'm a big proponent of using learning management systems
Mm.
to complement training that we're doing, not supplement, not instead of, but it's there
Mhm.
to complement and to help with what we know about the science of learning, to help prime and boost and rebring those things back around again, and video replays and things like that, and interactions on that. We use that to go right along with the entire interleaving throughout the academy, and I designed that. I designed that in a way so we were priming and boosting. Every subject that this recruit went into, they were primed on it before they got into class,
Mm.
2 days before, and then they were boosted on it and continually boosted when integrated afterwards. But as far as the trying to integrate all of those things, I had some primary instructors and I gave them on the LMS. It allowed me to put all the research on there that anyone wanted to. I don't think many of them probably got too deep. They just said, they knew me, and they said, we know that you like to do this stuff. Mike, just tell us what you need us to do. And
Mm.
then, then I connected the communication with those, and then we started doing it. And it was, it was challenging for sure. I think there were some things that we did that I thought, well, this will help a little bit. And that ended up exponentially helping, like unbelievable,
Can you
unbelievable.
give an example?
Yeah, probably the one thing that I only thought would be just a little bit of a help is we started priming our motor skills in the morning, and we did it. There's reasons why I wanted to do it then. So our traditional academy was get up in the morning, and we were a running academy. It was just our tradition with our agency. It was it still is a tough old school academy physically. So we have guys in the military boot camp. They're like, that's nothing like this. This is much harder. Okay, right? Whatever. Even this day and age. So, but we spent probably from the time they get in the morning to the time they were in their seats about 2 hours or 2.5 hours with showers and everything back up on running 5, 6, 7, 8 miles, and then calisthenics, and then doing all that stuff. And so we still would do that first couple of days, and just to, people would leave immediately because this is not for me. Okay, let's get that over with. But then we took that time, and I think a lot of things that trainers can do is look at your time management and efficiency. It's like, how much time are we spending on this? What are we getting out of it? What we were getting out of it was a lot of recruits with knee problems and shin splints within the first 2 months, and then did it show they had heart? Sure, but I can get that in other ways. So we broke that down, and what we started doing was we were going and breaking the academy up into 4 squads in the morning. And I had instructors set up depending on the availability and who it was. But given an example of this, I have a couple of firearms instructors in a room over here, and I had some defensive tactics people over here, some medical people over here, and I had different things that we did. And I had my physical trainers, people that were PT certified as well. We break up and we do 15-minute blocks. So 15-minute blocks. One of those blocks is going to be a very high intensity workout. And the goal is to get that VO2 max up over 90%. So it was like a Murph type workout, constant movement,
Yeah.
15 minutes and you're cooked, sweating, breathing, nonstop movement. 5-minute break, get some water, and you move, and they all shift. They're going in the room, and this is maybe at the first week or week and a half of the academy. I've got firearms instructors in there, and they just have frames from a sim gun that they're going to just work on some stuff, and they will get too technical, just get tier or holsters or all of the things that we spend the first 3 or 4 days with in the traditional block academy training, right? Which for most departments are only a week. Ours was 100 hours, and so we had more, but still, it's not enough. I never thought it was. So we were taking this, and then they go over DT, and so it's a little bit different because a lot of the younger folks now never been into a fight before.
Yeah.
So we start off with the ring the bell drills or shoulder touch drills, play king of the mat. They're running around vehicles outside with tennis balls or something, just trying to play hide and seek. So that again, a little more ecological approach, like you need to stand here behind the car. This is the best position. No, you go find it. Let's put it, suppose it. So we wouldn't do a ton of that. We wouldn't like, oh, now you're teaching them to throw a tennis ball. Like, no. Little pieces. And they were doing this every day where they're getting these 15-minute blocks. And then by the time they actually get into their days of interleaving their full range days out there, oh, it was really something to see, I have outside fire instructors come in as range safety officers, and they're usually there day 1, day 2, and they're used to the same progression of, okay, kids, we're going to start shooting guns now or defensive tactics. And they come in and they're coming out, boom, 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 and they're, moving and looking. And what did you do with these guys? And we've been doing it for a while. So to quote Chad Lyman, I don't want to say it without saying his name, or he'll choke me out. Do a little bit a lot, right?
Yeah.
In its simple form was those priming. So they're priming those and boosting those. So those things in the morning, those 15-minute blocks, and where I thought it'll help a little bit, it helped immensely.
Yeah.
Immensely. The other thing that I'll just share, the 2 big ones that we did was also very normal to traditional law enforcement academies still today, is to block and silo all the way through. And then when we put it all together and you have scenario-based training, rally-based, hi-fi, whatever term it is, it's usually towards the end of the academy, maybe a day, 2 or 3 or 4, maybe even 5 days of these full-blown radio and everything. And is okay, better than not doing them at all. They were there and you actually were going on calls to try to get them used to this before they went out onto the road into the FTO program. But what it customarily looked like was all the things they forgot from the block style of training. So everything was gone, everything was a mess. They're making mistakes everywhere, and it became a rite of passage to go through, not get it right, be embarrassed, all that. A big chuckle, pat them on the back. We all did the same thing, kid. It's okay. You'll figure it out when you get out there. For me, that's not acceptable. I get it, and I went through it, and it's everyone was doing what they thought was best. Not acceptable. It's not difficult to understand what we need to do. One of the points that I probably drive the hardest as far as the major things that we need to change in law enforcement training it's two things. It's early contextual relevance and more open skill environments. Those are the two big ones for me. So early contextual relevance. So we started taking that. We went from 26 weeks to, I added 3.5 weeks to the academy was for, and we added 120 to 140 hours of scenario-based training. It was done all the way through the academy. Now that's challenging, and you need to have good role players. You need to have well-designed scenarios. That's all the work you need to be doing now, because otherwise most places are just going to stay the same for the next 10 years anyway, with little improvements. But get your people, get them to understand how to best design scenarios. And I don't take that lightly. I mean, I really, when I teach in our certification class, and I don't take that lightly, that is a discipline that you need to have a good understanding. I thought I knew how to do it as well. And I'm not an expert at it, but I know where to look. Understand that we're in control of all stimuli that they experience. Everything we do needs to be on purpose and by design when we do that. And we really shouldn't be surprised anymore when we see things occur. And a lot of times it has more to do with how we design the scenario than their understanding and valuing of information that they're processing. So doing that all the way through. So we're having those actionable tools as they're actually learning the material, they're putting it in play. And by, just so people understand, when I talk about all of these hours of scenario-based training, they don't need to be these fully blown out scenarios. They just, these small ones are knocking on the door. And again, the majority of those were not force on force scenarios. They were your high frequency calls that you get every day. And I wanted to get that ratio of regular calls to hands-on and maybe go to your gun. I can't get it as close to as on the street because you wouldn't do any at all, but at least maybe 70%, 80% were non-contact type calls. They're just solving problems that was within the scope of what they've been learning so far, but I wasn't afraid to take them a little bit farther, right? Hard first instruction, a little bit, as long as it wasn't freaking video review, body worn camera review to assist and all that. I think that's all. Those were probably we got the most bang out of our buck. Doing that. So it's challenging for sure. Instructor commitment, yes, definitely. So
earlier you touched upon human error, and can you explain for beginning instructors what human error is, and can you give an example what it can mean for a trainer and then training?
So to me, I'll throw out some of the names of the book, and if anyone wants any of this like reference, I can send it to you, or some of the
great
list of references. It's not a lengthy list, but there's some great ones out there. And the names that were kind of turned on to me that I read was James Reason is like the godfather of that, and Rasmussen, but James Reason, Eric Holnagel, Sidney Decker. One of my favorites is Dr. Todd Conklin, and he's got a book called The 5 Principles of Human Performance. And it's got nothing to do with law enforcement. It's got everything to do with law enforcement. Okay, so he doesn't talk in law enforcement, it's more of occupational safety. But even if you download that and listen to it on Audible after the first chapter on it, and your brain starts going, oh my goodness, this is us entirely. And so to get back on some of the applicable pieces for the trainer, there's the theory from James Reason that I really like, and I use this a bit even when I'm designing courses of fire, is if I can get a basic understanding of the classifications of human error. It's really important. So classifications of human errors. So there's decision errors and performance errors. So decision errors are going to be ones where I'm figuring out a problem and I got it wrong, right? My intent wasn't, I didn't see it right. I didn't see the game right. It's game IQ, things like that. And performance is just my ability to perform the motor skill. So those two major classifications, and under those, the ones that are kind of within those are skill, rule, and knowledge-based errors, right? Skill, rule, and knowledge. So skill is going to be your fundamental basic, your motor performance, right? Your execution. And then your knowledge is going to be the decision error that's I'm trying to figure the situation out. The rule part, which it's kind of the gray area in between, but if you get into the literature a little bit, it kind of it talks about a lot of things that's important to trainers. And one of the rule things is something that has specific rules. So we start here, we end here, and there's a rule on how it's supposed to go. So for me, the way I took that was I'm looking at a high organizational skill. I'm going from a position to actually drawing from a triple retention holder, coming up here, dropping to a position or something, or a rifle, and I need to do all these things to get it up and running. And what a rule-based error or rule-based processing is, how do those little discrete skills concatenize together into a long snapping whip, if you will? So I know people say like myelination and all that, but when a piece is missed or out of sequence, you don't get the ending. So there's a failure point in the middle. And where, to me, kind of instructor blind spot, because we've already gotten good at stuff, so we don't understand why someone's having trouble with the mag safety. And it's like, they're still connecting the pieces on these rules. They don't even know how to do this, the discretes properly. And we've put it, we've done this. And the reason I say that, the benefit is what we've really learned is that I did something wrong. Back in the day, is if I had one of these really skills where I had to put it all together, and if they weren't in the order that I needed them to be in, you weren't going to get bang or punch or the takedown or whatever it is. So what I tend to do, because to me this was smart, normal, natural, and intuitive, was to break these discrete skills down into small pieces, practice them until they get really well done. Like I always call them crystallize that discrete skill, right? Crystallize. And then let's put it together. And now we've got this, each piece has been really, really shiny now. It was really dusty and yucky before, but now it's really shiny because we practiced it in repetition. So I've got all these shiny pieces and I put the pieces together. And what we can still do is a shiny piece can get in front or behind of the other shiny piece, because what we didn't do was connect them together. So now my understanding is if I have something that is more complex, that rule-based error that I can see when someone's making an error, maybe back on me and understanding that I need to have them running the chain entirely. Maybe not every time. I can still go back and brush up and shine up a couple pieces, but it keeps me, and I have an empirical basis for why I know I don't break it down into these small pieces, get all my reps, snap it together and assume it's going to happen. We did it all. You just did it. Just put it together. No, you don't put it together. You build it together. And I was talking to trainers about this, and I said, it's like, when you buy a brand new car, I got a brand new, or not brand new, but a few years old. When you go and buy a new car, you go in and you look, and it's all put all the beautiful pieces, and it's nice and shiny and waxed and everything else. If you order that and have it delivered to your house, what if they showed up and they just laid it out in your driveway or your garage, and all the pieces were all there and they were brand new and perfect and they're all really shiny? They said, go drive the car. Well, you didn't put it together for me. Well, you're supposed to do that. It's natural. We assume that. And we kind of do the same thing in training when we separate the pieces out and train them just that way. So like I said, go back and focus on certain parts. Of course I will, but I need to make sure that I'm running that chain all the way. So that's that understanding of that rule, basically, because, and here's where it means for trainers going forward, is that when I understand error, it helps me understand after the fact, we found why things are happening that are happening out there in the real world that we don't see in training. And that was also where I really went, oh my goodness, this has been here the whole time. And with that is slip and capture type errors, where our intention is correct, but our execution is flawed. And the best example that I use for that is, well, that's not the best example. So one example that predominates the profession would be taser weapon confusion, right?
Yeah.
So see that a lot. So taser weapon confusion would be one, but I think even though we've 21 or 22 times that's occurred that we're aware of anyway, I'm going to go back to another one that to me is a bigger issue, and why error is so important to kind of understand this. Because when we study error, we need to understand and kind of have you don't have to have a scientific depth of knowledge, I don't think, but that complexity of this delicate balance between automatic and control responses, right? So cognitive control processes
Yeah.
and automatic responses. And to me, that is so important. People out there that are listening and trainers, you got to dive into this stuff. I mean, we're the only ones that can do something about it. That's it. And so I always ask people, like, how many officers out there had to change either a gun or a holster equipment, so that you start from zero to bang, you have to do something different with your motor skills. There's a change, right? Oh yeah, now our gun has a safe door, it's a different type of holster or whatever. How much time did you have to transition that? So, we were always told neural pathways and myelination and all that stuff, and that's great, but understand that when these things occur and they show up on the range, we're usually training for qualification. We're usually training where people's attention is on what they're doing at the time, which is working this machine, this tool. So they're always focused on it. So when they have an issue, they can always look at it and kind of fix it, come out, and they do that. The understanding that in reality, it's at a different speed. Most of the time, they're not training at that real speed. And their attention, if they're doing a good job, is where it should be, which should be entirely external on what's actually occurring. So the processing, this needs to be running on automaticity. And that's where that double-edged sword to automaticity comes in, right?
Yeah.
That pathway comes up and it starts going down. We're not consciously monitoring what we're doing. We can't. We're selective attention on what's going on. And now this is where hell opens up, right?
Yeah.
And this is where the bad thing happens. So on the range and in training, a lot of times we won't see that because they're actually fixing things and focusing on it. So understand this delicate interplay, understand what it takes to actually build that new pathway stronger, because the old ones don't go away, they never do. I think the scientific term is called extinction, and we don't like that because you think of dinosaurs are done and they're always there. Eric, my hands can still move around the revolver. I came out and used a revolver, and I can still feel, I'm rusty for sure, but I can still feel my hands coming up and dumping and turning and going to my speed loader and coming in. And I think I could probably do it, without thinking about it much, even after 33 years, and
We
to
had,
me,
we had in the Netherlands, we had some years ago, we changed from, we had one standard weapon for the police, the Walter P5. Then it became the Walter P99. And it was totally different, like, and when you put a little bit pressure with the, how do you call it, the change of the magazine, people all make the old movements.
Yeah,
it was incredible how fast these movement patterns were.
And they come up, and the thing is, we know the recipe under human error. So what can we do about it and understand? Well, what are these errors, and do we understand them a bit? And is there a recipe for increasing the probability and therefore decreasing the probability? And with the research that has nothing to do with guns or law enforcement says, yes, we actually been studying this for a long time. And it's it's a similarity of action, or the outcome, frequency discrepancy in training and for our daily use, and then add speed and urgency to it. And people are like, well, I'd never make that mistake. And I said, you already do. You probably did one today. When you get into, you get into your car, I drive my truck all the time, and I got a car that's got the push button start, and I'll get in my truck with my key in my hand and I'll look down the button. There it is. It's the same delicate interplay between automaticity and where my inherent load is, right? It's cognitive load theory 101, that with understanding automaticity. And we operate with this all day long, every day. We always have these little tiny errors. There's no consequence. We laugh at ourselves sometime like this, but it's the same process, cognitive process, that's going on when we see errors with deadly situations, where now we have an intense focus on something that's hopefully external narrow, external broad, where it needs to be in the moment to read the play as it's happening. we do not have the ability or should be able to start doing this. Maybe you do, or maybe there's a, like I always say, that to me, the goal is to be able to move across those attentional quadrants
Yeah,
fast, like lightning fast, right?
yeah,
So we're not pulled into one and stuck there, which to me is
yeah.
another, could do another podcast on
When
that topic.
what would you suggest? So, for example, if you're working, if you're working on a police academy, maybe as a senior instructor with some influence, what would you suggest? How to start to delve into human error with your trainers without it becoming too overwhelming? You know,
Yeah, I think it would
what
be
would
good.
you suggest?
So look into it, read about it, and then talk about it. Give a presentation on it,
Yeah.
what it means. There's, like I said, there's some great information that's out there. Most of the work that's being done, and trainers out there, you guys ask yourselves this, but there isn't really an industry out there that I know, at least in the United States, and car manufacturers and everything else, that doesn't have these big industries, an entire division dedicated to how to keep workers safe, occupational safety, with some PhD or PhDs there that have a scientific understanding, and then looking at the difference between what are our procedures, what are our policies, all those, and how is work actually getting done in the factory, out in the
Mhm.
field, all these things. And they're always studying this to understand that, number one, to err is human, and I don't mean to be flippant about that. We do make them all the time. Therefore, it's not a surprise when it happens. How resilient are we as an agency, as a business, as an industry, to when that does occur, right? And there's all these things. How do we handle it when it occurs?
Mhm.
It's so predictable that it's not even interesting, is what Dr. Todd Conklin says. And I had to do some reading on that. And I'm like, you're actually right, to look into that. But asking yourself, all these industries realize that this is a major importance. And you can say it's because they care about people, or it's because it's liability and money. I know which one I think it probably is. But if it comes off as we care, okay, we'll take it, because it is about keeping people from getting hurt, and insurance claims, and all that. While workers are always trying to be productive,
Yeah.
we're always trying to go and do the job as efficiently as possible. How many agencies out there actually have a division that's concerned about, and their job is about keep officers safe on the street, to understand and study how work gets done? What are the policies, procedures? How are they actually doing it? And I know the only ones that answered yes to that, to me, I would believe, was RCMP up in Canada.
Mm.
They do. And I'm like, congratulations, wonderful. Keep me appraised of
Yeah.
how you guys are doing with that. But down in the States, we just look. No, we've got paramilitary, we got supervisors. And when you screw up, you go to internal affairs.
Yeah.
Name, shame, blame, retrain, and then set the game up so it can happen again, right? Or can we learn and grow from it? And to me, there's just a ton of information to help us understand that there's just because something bad didn't happen at your agency doesn't mean that it isn't just a mine waiting to get stepped on. And have that happen. I know I had a past chief who I love dearly, and he meant to pay a compliment, and I took it that way. I did say, this something happened across the country that doesn't happen here because of you guys, because of the training you provide. And I just, don't you say, don't you put that on me. That's not true. It's not true. I mean, how much time do we get to interact with all of our officers? It hasn't happened here, Chief, because it just hasn't happened here. And I can tell you that if you give me an extra hour, an extra 10 days, whatever, you give me an extra minute, we're going to be doing something in it as best we can, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's, to me, that's like, do yourself a favor, jump into some of that stuff.
Yeah.
I'd start with just, it's an easy leisurely read, is Todd Conklin's 5 Principles of Human Performance, and just kind of let that marinate. I probably listened to that book 25 times,
Wow.
grass, and just to
Yeah.
just to go over those principles and understand. To me, it's kind of cathartic too, to know that it's not just us.
Yeah.
um, all these industries. What does get frustrating is that most of the industries are starting to look at a systems approach to human error, where we understand that errors are being made. What can we do on the system side of things to account for that, to make it more resilient, right? The Swiss
Yeah.
cheese, like that resilience. And then for us, it's just like, well, they screwed up, punish them, retrain them, whatever, or, do it again in training. It's just do it again until you get it right. But when we understand the types of errors that we commonly make, because we are human, and I think, again, that main point is that I think also for administrators, I always say on our course that please also look at this. This is important for you to understand, because when policy, because this is what legally fits right and how the work gets done, they're not always going to be lined up. And sometimes they really get out here. So, which means the farther this gets away, the more it's going to fall on the officer's shoulders.
Yeah.
Why are they doing this when the policy is this? That's a good question. The answer probably is the same answer that they give in every other industry when they're working with pipes and steam and wires and metal. It's because this works. It's efficient and I can get
Yeah.
it done. I've got 20 more of these things to do before the end of the day.
Yeah.
So workers are always trying to be efficient and get work done,
Yeah.
unless they're trying to sabotage your industry,
Yeah.
which that's the anomaly. So we don't talk about that. That's not a human performance issue. That's a human resources issue. So we keep that out.
Great.
Right, so
I have some short questions left if you have time.
yeah, sure.
And the first one is with all those with all that information out there, human error, human performance, motor learning, psychology, mental skills training, officers' wellness. Well, we can go on and go on. What does it take for the training department to, distill it and to make it applicable for their trainers? Because as we all know, they don't have the time to, they don't take the time to read all those. And it is an enormous study, isn't it?
It is, and it does take time, but so I think the answer to that is going back from when I was running training is start doing it right now. You don't need to have the biggest plan in the world, and I'm going to change this, but you can start building a library for your trainers. Start in the middle. You don't have to start in the beginning. Start anywhere. Start with motor learning. Get research on this. That get a hold of me. I'll start you. I'll help you. I can give you a reference list to start with, and begin there. Start if you don't have one already, and I know a lot don't because I talk to a lot of trainers. Start building a library that's accessible online. I highly recommend building it on an LMS platform, and you can just start an LMS. There's kind of free ones, or they're not expensive. I used Moodle, but you can use any one of them. Doesn't matter, and most places have them now. And start putting the files in there, and then you can start building out if you want to, as a training command or something. Start building out blocks and putting them in motor learning and things like that. Then maybe add video content to it to support that. Watch Eric, watch Chris Butler, watch Force, all those trainers out there. Use skepticism when you look at this stuff, right? There's limitations to everything. So, start building and seeing. I always say, always look at things like a beautiful junkyards of information that people have done a lot of work in, but you can pick and pull from these places to understand them. I've got my favorites. We probably read a lot of the same stuff, Eric. I know. I'm a big, where I started, what I fell in love with first when it came to training is I found the Bjorks on some of their papers, and I was just, here we go. And then it just turned me on to other things and other research, and obviously Vickers and Tim Lee, Schmidt and Lee, and then it just went all over the place. So,
just start. That's the message.
Just start.
Yeah.
Start, and as you're doing it, share it with your people until you can come up with a structured type of something in there where you can have people actually learning. Send them the courses. That are like what we're talking about here, that are more of a deep dive for instructors, that are research based.
Yeah.
There's a lot of great trainers out there that are just doing like pistol stuff and skill stuff. They're friends of mine. They're great. And they run like a 2-day or a 3-day class. Like, they're not going to use a lot of these principles. They're punching out. It's an information transfer. That's it. What we're talking about is deep dive trainers trained to get better at what they do. The second part of that is something I kind of spoke to already for the commanders out there trying to start this is when you're bringing on your new trainers or your training staff, and hopefully you have the ability to have full-time trainers. That's great. If you don't, there's things you can still do, but it's absolutely more challenging when someone's pushing your car for 8 hours a day and they're expected to be your firearms trainer, your defensive tactics trainer. That's a lot, and I know there isn't a lot of internal support to allow them to get better at their craft. If you're a full-time trainer, and I know we did this a lot, and where I'm coming from, an agency that worked, our city is, I think, top 5 poverty per capita in the country, so we didn't have a big budget. But what we did try to do is if I can supplement trainers or in between academies, we didn't run back to back. We had a month between or something. My trainers were going out. They had it selected already. Go pick your schools, vet the schools, and get out there and train. Even when they're in house, they have time to train and do their own thing. So you have to have training time. So to me, the bottom line to that is, as commanders, treat your trainers as true professionals. To me, is at a PhD level. Trust me, at that level, they should be treated that way because it's on them. It really is. I forgot. I think it was one of the guys that I lead, and I wish I could remember his name. But they would say you fall to the level of your training, and it's like he said, no, you fall to the level of your trainer. So Graham, I think it was out there. Thank you for that one, because I kind of thought about that and go, yeah. When you really think about it, most law enforcement officers get in the domains within law enforcement. The limitation is you, the trainer. What do you know? And it's not your ability either. It's what they're learning from you, and you know that's it. So I always say that we do this not because we love and care for law enforcement, and we love and care. That's natural, of course we do. When I started getting into all of these things, which again, I'm not trying to come off as a self-proclaimed expert. I'm not. I just stayed really curious and wasn't afraid to try new things, and had some supportive people and some great, fantastic staff that worked with me full time. I miss them dearly. I can't talk about them without getting a little misty here. So, but you do what you can. I did it for selfish reasons. The reasons I tried to do this was for selfish reasons, and it wasn't what you think. It's because I really wanted to sleep at night. And I didn't have trouble doing that until I took the job as a full-time trainer. And I realized that when blood hits the floor out there, and it always does, you're going to be thinking that you're going to carry this and wear this. You're going to be questioning everything, and whatever happened out there, I was a piece of that. We don't think about the successes. As a matter of fact, most of the times we don't see them, right? Because the thing didn't happen. And that was because of some influence and some way along the training that you assisted in developing that person into a problem solver. But when the bad thing happens, we immediately look back at ourselves and go, what could I have done better, right? Or their gun jammed, or they had a short stroke on the trigger, or something. It doesn't matter what it is. You're going to reflect, and then if it's bothering you, it's gonna eat at you for a long time. So to me, the way to combat that, knowing that that's inevitably going to happen, whether I'm here, retired, someone I trained, is that I can always want to say that I'll rest on, I did the best that I had with everything I knew at the time. And I never walked into a training thing one day and just kind of came in at 80% or 70%. It's always the best you could do. So if you've got that in you, do this job. But guys out there listening to this, or trainers, you're professionals. It's a true profession within the professional law enforcement. They're expecting you to do it. They're relying on you to do it. So, if you've got that level of commitment, there's so much information out there to help you more fully develop yourself. Do it not just for yourself, but for the trainers that are coming up under you, to turn them on to this information, and expect that everything that or a lot of stuff that we believe to be the best way to do it right now with all this research, it's still going to change. Get used to that, right? It's still going to change and grow. So always leave that whole piece of the pie open with a little piece that we still don't know, or that we may be getting not just right. Maybe not completely wrong, but maybe we're just off by a minute of angle or two, right? Just a little bit. So, yeah.
What keeps you fired up to this day with regard to police training? Because if I understand correctly, you're retired.
Yeah, well, I really I'm pretty emotional when I teach and I speak, because I do care about helping trainers. I know the struggle that they have, and when we're out teaching the courses, trainers will come up and they're talking about, oh, I don't have trainers and money and we don't have any time and all. I can see and I can really connect and understand with that because we had the same situation. So I was lucky enough to find some goodies out there to help me on a path to understanding things a little deeper. But again, like I said, not perfect. But I love sharing that information to go, look at this. This is going to help you immensely. So I get fired up sharing information and I get fired up just staying curious to see how people are using things and what is still out there for us to learn. That gives me purpose. So retired to me, I'm retired from this one agency, the city of Syracuse. Now I feel like I'm working for law enforcement, you know,
Wow.
whatever I can impact, stay relevant by trying to stay on top of
Yeah.
information, understanding again, what's the use of this, what's the limitation to it, and trying to find that balance. And if I can help, I don't know about motivate. I was kind of struggle about how important that is. But if I can help reignite trainers out there, boy, that's worth it right in itself, right? I don't even need to talk about any of the research. You can go do it on your own. You just need a little ignition because if you've been doing this for a while, we all came in with enthusiasm, but then
Yeah.
you stuck into this hamster wheel of helpless. I can't change the structure. I'm just going to come in and just be good and care, but you know, just every once in a while it'll get you down and just
And
reignite, help new trainers get back out there, right?
great. When is your book coming out?
Ha! I wish. I do have a lot of notes, but only I understand them.
Yeah. But are you because you have such experience and so much ideas, is it something you think about?
I've thought about it, but Dr. Bill keeps me pretty busy. So on
Yeah,
the road and just everybody that is out there pushing me kind of suffer from a little imposter syndrome. It's like, well, you know, what do I know? Sometimes we have those thoughts, right? It's like, well,
yeah,
uh, and even before the podcast, like, well, what makes you so special? What do you know? And it's like you just read a lot and things and try to put things together. And I think it keeps you kind of humble and saying that, there's a lot of information. It's how you use it, and how you try to make those connections and bring it into this profession. So you're bringing the research to life. And I found that the researchers really enjoy that because they think nobody reads this stuff. I heard Dr. Murray that you had on there and
yeah,
Dr. Horns. You read this stuff? Like you actually use it? I'm like, yeah, this is how I use it. This is how we did. Like, wow, that's great. I didn't think
yeah.
anybody read this stuff. Dr. Mark Green said the same thing when I talked to him. Nobody reads this. We do. You just don't get the feedback on
Yeah.
it. But yeah, it's yeah, yeah.
I have to say,
Inspired me, Eric. You inspired me to maybe think about that.
yeah, but I have to say, I wrote a book with contributions from Bill Lewinsky, Jeff Quayle, and it's in Dutch. But for me, it was also a kind of, I didn't expect anybody to read it in the first place. But as Stephen Pressfield, his book is called Nobody Gives a Fuck or something like that.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's a
yeah.
great book about it. And
Mhm.
but I found it very therapeutic is a wrong word, but I found it, yeah, to put your words on paper and to round it off a little bit. I mean, it feels great to, yeah, I'm not,
Yeah.
no, don't have the right words for it, but
I've got a habit of writing on these pads here,
yeah,
these legal papers, and I have bins full of them, and they're not just
yeah,
notes. Just sitting in the morning or in the evening and an idea on something and start writing it out.
great.
And I started a little bit of a book, an introduction, and I wanted to write it on human error, which
Wow,
I
yeah,
don't have my PhD in that or anything, but
doesn't
um,
matter.
yeah, untrained superheroes, and I had a picture of a Superman character smashing into a brick wall, and it and kind of jumping into that because of I guess for me, I wasn't writing it to publish or anything. I was writing it. It was more cathartic for me,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
working some cases and things like that, and then people's opinion about how officers should perform. And sometimes, not to offend investigators, but we forget that what is your true expectation of this human being based on
yeah,
this archetypical superhero in our brain, right? And
yeah,
you really go back and look that we're just good folks that are just have some specialized training, but not much over time, were more problem solvers. They got really good with interacting in the world, in the community. And then we have these tools, once in a while we need them, but we don't train them that. So there was a lot of things.
Yeah.
So, and then understanding human error, it would help me write, and then it would be cathartic. Like I said, I would relax a little bit and go, okay, it was more safe to do. Nobody'd ever read that anyway.
If you had to choose between Stephen Pressfield or Viktor Frankl.
So I don't think I told you this, but my required, let me rephrase that, recommended reading when they came into the academy, which when you knew my academy staff, anything that was recommended was required, was Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life.
Yeah.
Which I actually got to meet him and talk with
Wow.
him briefly about law enforcement training. Briefly, this is before he blew up all over.
Yeah.
And then the books that I have right up here in order from Stephen Pressfield is one of my favorite authors. So Do the Work, Turning Pro, and I'm blanking on it.
War Hearts, yeah.
Yeah, and I also have those three in a particular order, right? The way they were meant to read. And then the fourth one, which is different from the other three, is The Warrior Ethos.
Yeah.
I really like the way he approached that.
Yeah.
So that was right in the beginning of the academy. So when my recruits come in, they know it's different because other academies are reading law books and people procedure. I'm like, what has this guy got us reading? And I'm like, I need to have you here and understand, because if you've read those books, when you're going into a new profession, especially at that age, they're great. They're great. Abuse and resistance.
Abuse and resistance.
Right? And I always connect with that. My last name being Musengo. I'm like, this stuff is meant for me.
Great.
So I really feel that, right? When you're creating, it's like, oh, Stephen, you're really on this. That son of a gun is on my back like a monkey right now. So those I use those in the academy as, and I'll actually pull the books out on like Friday and I quote something out of that, and then we talk about it for a little while and what that means to them. So Steve Pressfield for sure. Frankel's a quick read, but they should have that as well.
Yeah. And I'm still waiting for Ken Murray writing his second edition, because he promised us that part 2 was coming, but I spoke to him, but he said he had a kind of imposter syndrome also for part 2, training at the speed of life. Yeah. So did I forget to ask you an important question?
No. No, I didn't. I mean, talk about anything you like, and I've got more. I mean, I love talking about, one of my favorite subjects is talking about attention.
Yeah.
That is in training, and the night first quadrant, internal, broad, and top-down control, and the reasons we do scenario-based training, to me, is to build top-down attentional control.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest, strongest, I would say, figurative muscle to build.
Yeah.
And it should be our goal through the academy to put people into those places cognitively where they didn't choose to be, and then help them build that quick transition out when they know it's not good. So that understanding, that realization of what's important now, and then usually, I think that attention is so important in training, and so we don't talk about really fight, flight, and all that anymore. And it just really, for a trainer to understand where someone is cognitively when they're going through a scenario or when they're working on something, just kind of for the listeners, I just understand that we spend most of our time driving our trainees' attention into paying attention to doing what they're doing when they're learning a new skill. When we want them to perform it, it's out there into the world. Again, we need to stop doing this. Okay.
Right.
Because we are wiring them into this technical aspect of it when we need to be intentionally out here. So there's a lot more there with that. And
let's talk again about that. I would love to.
Yeah, I mean that's one, is where we are driving their focus of attention during training is completely different than where we expect it to be out there in the real world.
Yeah.
And where we don't normally take them is one of the quadrants that usually gets where things don't work out well. And that's when a lot of times people will look at, well, they're focusing on the gun, they're focusing on the hand, they're focusing on the punch, the movement, the thing, the communication, or they're focusing on what's going on here. And it's kind of can go back and forth really quick. Where the area I think that we neglect to just ridiculous amount is the internal focus of attention. We don't talk about that internal part. And to me, that's the one, right? That's the, does someone see the situation they're going into as a threat versus a challenge?
Yeah.
And what does it take to get someone, it's different for everyone, but what happens when someone does go into an internal focus of attention when it is not a good time to be there?
Great.
Things
Yeah.
changing in front of them. So a lot of people have different slang terms for like goofy loop or someone just froze. And as a trainer, it's like, that's not good enough for me. I want to know what's actually occurring.
Yeah.
So when a lot of times when it's, I mean, good examples, there's a lot of other variabilities in this, but when something occurs unexpected, a bottom up pull to the attention and it's a shock, we end up going in. It can, depending on what it is, oh my God, I might die right now, go internal focus of attention. And for investigators, we teach this that, somebody survived something in their memory, they can't remember anything, but they can tell you that they could feel their heart beating in their chest. They can tell you they thought they're going to die. And when we're intensely focused and we're in here, we're not out here, we're not processing. And we know it's really very bad for performance, or this is changing out here and we're not reading it because we're in here. And it makes a lot of sense to the researchers and the people that study this. It's like, oh yeah, this is like 100, 200 level. And for us, we're just still going, they're going through scenario based training. They're just not getting it, do it again or you fail, and you're driving them more internal. So I want to design training knowing that, and again, it doesn't always mean they're in fear. When I'm trying to solve a problem, if I'm thinking about what I want to say next, that's an internal process. It's the same thing, but I'm in here and I'm not processing out here. So in training, I would say, look, I want to take people and put them through scenarios, and I want to throw them a little bit into there. I want to get them into that internal focus and realize that they need to get out. And I want to build that muscle, their ability to recognize it and get to where they need to be.
Yeah.
Not just external now. That's an example. It depends on the context, right?
Of
So I
course.
want them to have more of a top-down control when all of a sudden it occurs to them, and they need to know, I need to take control of my attention and where it needs to go. Need to understand priority of life first. I need to understand that if I expect this thing might happen someday in a real way, really understand that when it does show up, it loses its strength of going, I never thought this would happen to me, to here it is, and more of a recognition than a, oh my goodness. Right? So, but I want to get them used to being put into this thing, and I call that internal quadrant up there, I call it the quicksand. So teaching them how to, when they find themselves in the quicksand, to get out of it. And it's not that you're not going to go there. I think the healthy thing to do is to understand that life is going to throw every single one of us in there when it's not best to be there. Maybe it's not even on the job. Sometimes it's okay to be internal, right? We get bad news.
Of course,
You grieve and you things, it's okay.
Yeah.
But things are changing rapidly in front of me and I have something to say about it. Boy, I need to be reading it. And if I'm not reading it. So that importance of that, designing training around that. My recruits read Robert Nidafer's quadrant research, attention control theory on day 2.
Right.
And then we talk about that all the way through the academy. Even when we just have them repeating command number or whatever, rule number 4, yes, sir. And then someone's yelling in their ear and like, today a chief will walk up and go, why are you yelling? And I go back with the research and go, watch this. Because an hour and a half from now in classroom, we're going to discuss cognitively what was going on in that recruit's brain in a friendly way to help let them know that everything we're doing is on purpose by design to help build this muscle, right?
Yeah.
Love you. We care for you.
Yeah.
You're going to go out and do the job. So thank you. Let's work on the tools to do this. So attention to me is probably one of the biggest things. I say that about a lot of things, but
Dr. Lewinsky told me that Nidafer was a advanced Aikido practitioner also.
Okay.
He was a martial artist, which I found quite interesting. And there's a lot to say about attention, of course. My colleagues here from the Netherlands, Raoul Audians and Arne Nieuwenhuis, they developed a model of attention. I'm not exactly what you're talking about now.
Yeah, Known House, yes, I've read,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's powerful.
It's very powerful. So Mike, thank you so much.
It's great talking to you. What an honor. I'm here.
Yeah, it's for me also. And I think we can make a nice book list also from some resources and to be of service to academy instructors and so on.
Oh, for sure. I've got my favorites. I call them the
Great.
goodies. And people ask, and I send out a reference list of the
Yeah,
goodies.
but maybe we can email and make a great list.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah.
So for now, I'm saying goodbye to the listeners, and then we will say goodbye. So thank you for listening, and hope you enjoyed it. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks. It was an honor. Stay safe out there, everyone.